Welcome back to Fast Market on the Schwab Network. I'm Kevin Hinks along with Nick Theodorakis. Now let's bring in our guest for today's show. He is the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Mr. Landon Swan. Landon, thanks for coming on as always. Rivian with earnings out after the bell. A lot of news coming out in the EVs, Landon. Here's my question to you, the first one. If I'm shopping for a Rivian, I am not worried about a $25,000 Tesla. That is not in my price range. Like I tell my children, Landon, aim higher is what I'm doing. Give us your thoughts on Rivian.
You know, I like it. Yeah, Lucid's 115, I think, something like that. Rivian's truck is $75,000. Now, to be fair, Rivian's $75,000 truck is not competing with Tesla's new $25,000 or $26,000 car. They're probably going to compete with the Cybertruck, and that's a whole different discussion. But I do think it's pretty interesting that Tesla's going to shake up the market even more. They created this market basically, but now they're shaking it up by creating this lower priced vehicle. And I think it's going to be extremely popular. That's a very, very low price range for consumers to get into an EV, and the top line EV, in my opinion. So that'll be interesting. But when we look at Rivian, they're doing well, frankly. I mean, you look at how well they're doing. They've got strong consumer happiness. Lucid's actually leading the market there at about 71%. Rivian's at about 65%. Tesla's at the bottom there at 58%. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've actually delivered, right? Tesla's out there. Pre-launch, they had the highest happiness. Everybody was expecting the best and had grand visions of what a Tesla model would look like. But once you actually get into the cars, I think, people come down to earth a little bit. They start seeing maybe some problems here or there. But overall, what we're seeing is that the EV market is dominating the traditional makers. I mean, you can look at the web visits of just the Tesla, Rivian, Lucid versus GM and Ford, and there is a stark difference between where the EVs are versus the traditional automakers. Tesla is leading clearly on a year-over-year basis. You can see here at plus 57%, and that's from a high point, right? I mean, they were the leader before, and now they're extending that lead. Rivian and Lucid still, doing well, improving on a year-over-year basis, and clearly taking from the traditional automakers. So that's very important. And then also, when you look at, Rivian's last report, they talked about how they're getting their per unit vehicles cost down. They're going to get to a positive gross margin in 2024, assuming they don't try to lower prices too much to compete with Tesla. This is a bit of a wrench in the works here, so we'll see. But they're doing very well with that regard, so very happy to see that. But if you look at how Tesla reported their last report, they kind of hinted that profitability takes time, and I think that put a damper on their stock. Everybody wants them to just continue to ramp at the pace that they've done, but the profitability does take time. The Cybertruck, the outlook was tempered. The profitability timeline was further back, and they're talking about how long it takes to scale production and get cost efficiencies in there, and that's going to be true for every EV maker. So Tesla's kind of just previewing, I think, what investors need to worry about a little bit when it comes to taking this market by storm. Now, Tesla's the clear leader, but Rivian and Lucid are clearly playing catch up, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And the question is how much of that is already priced into the markets. You've seen what Lucid's stock's done. It's pretty poor. Rivian's doing better. They both report today after the market. We are kind of neutral / leaning bullish barely on each of these. I think that the data that we've got shows that they're doing well against the traditional automakers. Not doing as well against Tesla, but that could change over time as they get there. Rivian's going to deliver 52,000 vehicles this year, and if they get that gross margin positive next year, then they could really start to ramp up. And frankly, I think that the Tesla's move with the Cybertruck really opens the door for Rivian because it's the only true truck. I mean, Cybertruck it's a novelty, in my opinion. They will compete with the F-150 Lightning, but when it comes to the true EV side of things, Rivian's got the best looking truck on the market right now. So whether or not consumers buy it at $75,000, we'll see. I agree with you to a point, but that $26,000 car is really going to turn some heads, Kevin.
It just doesn't feel to me like they're really there's a lot of things we're conflating that we're sort of competing with each other. The lowering prices, the really unique kind of bespoke offering of the Cybertruck, opposite ends of the spectrum. Rivian's much more of that kind of normal product that's in the middle here. It seems like the Ford truck is the biggest competition, Landon. But you look at you go to the earnings here and you look at the profitability. And Kevin and I were talking in the prior segment about kind of the lack of tolerance for no path to profitability here. You're looking at a consensus of losing $1.33 per share on $1.3 billion in revenue. Customers don't care about that. People seem to love their Rivians. I see them all over my town. But how do they get to that profitability point? Are you expecting to hear from them about kind of production and manufacturing output in their conference call? And do you expect them to address the fact that they are still losing per share like this?
Yeah, I think the key is scale. I mean, you have to get to the point where you're creating a ton of vehicles and you're able to sell them. If you get to that point, then you can get the scale that's needed, the economies of scale. You can get that per unit cost down, and you can get gross margins up. And then it's a matter of getting the customers in the door. But you have to be able to do that. It's kind of a what comes first type situation, because Tesla, when they first started, they had the same problem with production and getting costs down and efficiencies and all that. But they had unbelievable consumer demand. I mean, there were wait lists. People wanted these cars so bad. So as the novelty wears off and as you're getting into a situation where you're fighting for that demand, it's going to be tough in order to get the cost down, because you have to have the scale, and in order to have the scale, you have to have the demand. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So they've got to create a fantastic product that creates a ton of consumer demand, so that a lot of people want these vehicles, and then they can ramp up the production to match. So I think that Tesla's kind of shown that you have to have an unbelievable product that turns heads. I mean, they did most of that with pretty much no marketing. They just created a fantastic product. You've got to create the fantastic product to get the demand. And we've always said at LikeFolio, if you've got consumer demand, you can figure it out. So you've got to get that first in order to support the high production, the economies of scale, the low production cost in order to get to profitability. So it's a bit of a longer term thing, and I don't think investors will love hearing that, but it's the truth, and Tesla's shown us that map.
Landon, let's have the apples to apples discussion, because I think that's where the real discussion comes in these cars. There's not going to be one car out there, right? So people like different models of different things. And if you're in the market for a $25,000 Tesla, that's not comparable to the Rivian truck or the Lucid or the Fisker or any of these, right? If you're looking for a large SUV, you're not looking at the inexpensive Tesla, right? Oh, and if you're looking for a compact car, you're not looking at Rivian. So they'll have their big sample size of people that want the $25,000 Tesla. But there's a group of people, and Nick and I mentioned, driving around the western suburbs of Chicago, there's a lot of Rivians, and both the pickup and the SUV version. And these people aren't buying a $25,000 car and never going to. They're in a different price range. So apples to apples, what are the comparisons? And here's one last thing. Who's going to win out of this? Which one's going to be the next Tesla, and which one's going to be the next DeLorean?
I love the DeLorean reference. Yeah, who's going to win is the consumer. I mean, all these fantastic options for people. It's going to be a plethora of options, and I agree completely that it's not the same market. I will say, though, that if you get into a situation with Tesla where they're producing so many of these, I don't know what they're called, maybe Model Q or Model 2 is what's being thrown around, these lower priced vehicles, you will find economies of scale that carry over into your other production. So I do think that's a bit of a win for them, even though they're not going to be competing directly. Here you can see that the Rivian chart, you can see that mentions are very strong, pretty strong, but holding, not accelerating while the stock has sold off. A little bit of a divergence opportunity here for investors on the long-term basis. But yeah, absolutely. I think that in the end, they can all win to a degree, and the consumer is certainly going to win. I think it's going to be interesting to see how GM and Ford react to all of this. I mean, the F-150 Lightning, I think, is a real competitor to Rivian. I don't see the Cybertruck right now as a competitor